allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You text her? She said she was.
Thank you, everybody. Happy 2019 to everybody. And we have a pretty full agenda this evening. I'd like to start with approval of the meeting minutes from December 12th. If anybody would like to make a motion, that would be great.
Moved.
Moved by Tracy. Do I hear a second? Seconded by Mike. Is there any adjustments or changes that need to be made to the minutes? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes are approved. And we're on to public comment.
No public.
Unless somebody here wants to step out as a member of the public and say something to us, we don't have anybody signed up at this point.
You're doing a great job.
So I would like to, before we get into the reports, ask to amend the agenda for after the executive session. And where is the second page? I know. After item number 10, because we will be discussing in that, I have a sheet of paper with the motion. We will be discussing the tentative agreement between the Board of Ed and the Windham Federation of Teachers Union. So the motion, Murphy, could you make the motion? The first, not this one, but that.
Yeah, I know. Move that the board add to the agenda the approval of the tentative agreement between the Board of Education and the Windham Federation of Teachers Union as an action item at the conclusion of the executive session.
Second.
So the motion's been made and seconded. Any conversation? Yes?
Yeah, I would rephrase it, that we're going to review the we're not going to, it's not the approval of the motion, I don't think. Is it? It's just.
This is the wording that the attorney gave us to use, but do you think?
What are the off chance that we don't approve it?
Okay. To take action. How about to take
me.
action? Could be
just a nitpick.
yes, no, or
That's
no
fine.
action.
Yeah, that
right?
makes sense.
Okay, so we would change the approval, the words "the approval" to take action on.
Well, wait a minute. The idea is that the motion is to approve the tentative. You can vote no on the motion. You got three options if we have a motion to approve the tentative agreement. We can approve the tentative agreement, we can reject the tentative agreement, or we can defer consideration but you start out with a motion to approve it. I know the town council writes them as discussion and
Possible
action. I don't really have a problem if you'd want to word it that way, but as the chair says, the attorney supplied us with the language.
No, the attorney did not supply us with the language. Ms. Testa put it together.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's a minor
I didn't
point.
see you over there. I thought it was the attorney.
We normally recommended acceptance of, is how we word ours on our action statements. We don't
Recommended
say,
approval or a recommended acceptance?
we say recommended acceptance. That's how the Board of Ed does it.
Oh, there's a recommended approval there, too.
So it's up to you. I mean, it's not a.
Okay, I don't want to really belabor
Yeah,
this
it's not a
point.
point.
Do you
Let's just
want to
move on.
change it? Do you want to change it? Do people feel strongly that we should change it? I'm looking around.
No.
Okay. So
Still remarks
your
come.
point is well taken, though,
Yep,
and we will try to do that more in the future with the wording. So any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion on the floor?
We'll add it to the agenda.
It will be added to the agenda. Thank you. So now we're on to reports from the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are Good afternoon to all, and Happy New Year's. Well, I would like to start with some information regarding our technology improvements in the school district. As you know, technology is a big part of our strategic plan, and we do have a technology plan. And as technology changes rapidly over the years, there is a need to provide the teacher with the latest technology in their classroom. This year, in December, we started providing the elementary teachers with some new Chromebooks. That way they can access information and work with students. This is only for the teachers at this time, elementary teachers, and that was in the capital improvement plan, $125,000 to provide those to
Dr.
the
Garcia, can you bring your mic a little closer?
Okay.
It's not picking up.
So that was in the capital improvement plan, $125,000 to provide to teachers. So fifth grade teachers in December received Natchog, Windham Center, Windham, and Sweeney received their Chromebook. In January 2019, we'll move to the other grades level and also to the same school, and we'll do kindergarten and first grade. It's important for those teachers in kindergarten and first grade to have this information as they using some new materials in order to provide information to students and record students' progress. So as you can see, it was the plan to provide Chromebooks to the new Chromebooks to the teachers in elementary school this year, and we are getting that done in this school year. So next couple of years we have to do the same, but right now all teachers at the elementary level in all the schools, including Barrows, are receiving new technology. I know there have been some question of how we're moving forward with the RFQ for the master plan for the K through 8, and here I'm just giving you a timeline of when that will be posted and when it will be out. We are working on that RFQ. We should put it in the last detail. We expect to have it done by Monday, and is there a timeline there of when it's going to be out?
If anybody has any questions on any of the items that the superintendent is running through, please just indicate so. Tracy?
On this RFQ, which as Chair of School Planning and Design I didn't know was going out yet, it says here K-8 schools, and as a board, we haven't moved towards K-8 schools, so I don't know why that's all that we're examining.
No, you're totally right. So the initial conversation from the board of the committee of building, it was to look at the district moving to a K through. You haven't approved it. That's your concept. You want to move to a K through 8 school.
No, we haven't decided that as a board.
Exactly. You haven't decided, but you told us to investigate the possibility of what that would look like moving to a K through. So this is just to investigate the possibility of what.
But
that
no
would
other possibilities.
Well, there could be other possibilities.
But this is written specifically, every bullet point says K-8, K-8.
Yeah,
K to
but it
8,
hasn't
K to
gone
8.
out there. We can add. Actually, I'm going to add more to this after further investigation today regarding the need for the architect in the district. I saw that there's a need also to add more to this. So when we put it out on the 16th and the 14th or the 16th, we'll add some more things to this. But initially, it started only as a K through 8. Yes.
Is there particular wording that you would like to suggest?
I would like to see all options
Okay.
explored, not just K through 8. I know
Okay.
that is, right now, something Dr. Garcia is very interested in. I went through a K through 8 school. Barrows is a K through 8 school. They work fine, but what are other options that are out there? And before this gets sent out as an RFQ from the Board of Education, the Board of Education should have the opportunity to review it, what the RFQ looks like.
Well,
And an RFQ is a request for qualifications, not a request for the proposal.
Right.
So should it be an RFP instead of an RFQ with financial?
I don't have any
numbers
issue with
attached
that.
to
The RFQ is an operation project. It belongs to the Department of Operation. It's not a policy agreement. We have never brought an RFQ to the board in the past, but I'm welcome to bring it. But it's an operation matter, meaning it's done through the finance department and the prospective department that involved. For my years of being here, for the 5 years, we have put out different RFQ. The last one we put out was an RFQ to do the study about the high school project, and that RFQ was done by the Department of Facility, the Department of Finance, and other departments. But I'd be happy to send it to
The
the
feasibility
board.
study, is that
The
what you're referring
feasibility
to?
study, we
Yeah,
put
there
that
was
one
a
out.
committee that oversaw that.
No.
Mr. Kalajian was chair of the committee, and Ms. Lassard was on it, that oversaw the feasibility study for the high school.
There was a committee that oversaw, but that the report went to them after, but they didn't oversee the development of the RFQ. The development was not done by them. But this is not a big issue, but I do want to bring to the attention of the board that development and RFQ and RFP fall on the responsibility of the operation of the district. But I'm happy to send it to you or to any member of the board when we get it.
I just think before it gets sent out, we should make sure that it's.
Happy to send it.
So what, go ahead, Mike, then I will try to synopsize what I'm hearing.
What I'm kind of thinking I think along the lines of Tracy's thinking, but a few weeks back, maybe a few meetings ago, we had talked about a feasibility study, and it was somebody that was going to come in and do a study whether or not K-8 schools would work in our district.
That's what it is right here.
Okay, and then versus, staying the way we were. Does this happen before this whole thing goes out? I mean, how are we looking on that study? And
So there are good question, Mr. Lister. There are two parts of this. One is there would be an architect who looks at just the building part of the K-8 building. What would happen? What building can be K-8 building? What building can be closed? What can be added? So that's part of that study. So that's the feasibility study of just the building part of K-8.
You mean the facilities?
The facility part, part. And then that comes first. Then there's another study that will be done to look at what happened when a district goes K-8 in terms of programs. In terms of programs. This is not looking at that. This is just looking at your facility and said, how many facility you have, where can they go, enrollment, projection, that's what it's looking at. It's not looking at programs to say, okay, is K-8 a good way to go? This would not be looking at that.
okay, I guess I had thought we were going to look at something. There was somebody going to look at program-wise and curriculum, what would benefit this district.
And you're totally right, and that one needs to be done. We have not put that one out yet.
Okay.
Okay, but that one is my intention to do that because, as I said from the beginning, this does not cover that. This does cover building facilities. That one, I will be working with my team to get that one out as soon as possible.
And so I have a question then about the timing and the sequencing of all of this, not to throw a huge wrench in things, but to say, I think the point is well taken that if we are going to be seriously pursuing a K-8 strategy at the district level, it would be very helpful for the board members to have a report on the pros and cons,
Sure.
the pluses and minuses, so we could really have that conversation. So then the question comes, does it make sense to do an RFQ for K-8 for the facilities in a vacuum?
Well, I was following the directive of the board. This is something that you guys, actually, the last meeting said this should have been out already. So it was the building committee, the one that directed us that they wanted this out to look at the facility. You're totally right. It could be that we could do the reverse, that we have the research about K-8. Actually, Dr. Youngberg and I started doing that months ago, compiling an ARATNA, what the research said about K-8 schools across the country, what are the pro and what are the con, and they're research on both sides. So we stopped that because the conversation moved to, well, we need to know about the facilities. Actually, I have a proposal from Mr. Roach that came to me to look at that, and we decided that we have that proposal, but we want to put this out to everyone.
more bidders.
For more bidders.
Right.
Right, and that was as a result of what was discussed in the building committee that night.
So, but back to the point about the broader master plan for facilities, do we need a consultant to look at more than just, and so, as to Tracy's point, should the RFQ be expanded beyond?
So as you look at K-8, Ms. Lambert is right. You just don't want to say, okay, should the district go only K-8? You should look at different options. Should we go K-5 over here? Should we go, I don't know, K-6? Different. It could be a lot of different possibilities. K-8 was the one that this board have discussed and was inclined. But there could be, when we asked the consultant to do the study, we could include as many possibilities. It was unlimited possibility that they could bring back to us.
Murphy?
Okay, so my concern at this point is this is taking too much time. We did a master plan, 6 years ago? And part of the issue here is that the Sweeney School, for example, has not been renovated since 1964. Windham Center hasn't been renovated since '68. North Windham hasn't been renovated since '86. By the time we take care of renovating those buildings, the high school, the middle school, which opened in '97, will need to be renovated because it'll be more than 30 years old. At the rate we're going, we're already overdue for getting started on this, if we're going to look at the facilities and the programs, it seems to me we ought to be doing them in parallel. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is, if not K to 8, it's not like there's an infinite number of other possibilities. It basically says you're going to divide K to 8 into some combination. You're going to break them into, well, now we're K to 5 and 6 to 8. When the middle school does come up for renovation, if it isn't full or nearly full, we're not going to get the kind of reimbursements from the state that this community needs to be able to afford to renovate a building. So we need a plan that also fills up that building physically. And one way to do it, of course, is to go back to what existed once upon a time, which was K to 4 and 5 to 8. That would increase the population in the middle school. Whether it's the right thing to do or not is arguable. If we want to take a look at K to 8 versus something else, then let's limit something else to one thing. And the question would be, is either K to 5 or K to 4?
Any thoughts? I mean, we're sort of going all over the place, but I think we need to land with some agreement on a direction rather than wait until our next meeting to then continue talking about this. So
I think K to 4, K to 5 is totally, so I would not look at, just because I wouldn't want to, as a parent, my kids wouldn't be there. But that's
you
just
want
me.
to stick with the K to 8?
I like the K to 8, but I'm not I
Okay,
don't know how to work, or would redistricting the schools in the same setting that we have now work better? I don't know. Are we losing, are we spending more money with the way we're districts now because of what we did, the way it was district before? I mean, it was done because of economic structure, and now that's pretty much level across the board. So we can go back to putting students where their closest school was. Is that going to save us money, or will the K to 8? I don't know.
Well, does anybody else who hasn't spoken yet want to say anything on this topic? Yes, Mary?
Yeah, I'll just say that I would be interested in knowing what the change has been in, supposedly the move was because of student performance, the move of 5th grade back to elementary schools. So we did that. That was a major change in the district. So what was the outcome of that? I am concerned about the middle school having been depleted of a quarter of its students by our own initiative, and then the possible repercussions. And the need now to think of different, possibly unheard of things to put into the middle school is a little bit concerning to me. As far as K through 8, we really have to say the STEM school it's sui generis. It's a magnet school. It's new, just because it's not succeeding because it's K through 8. Also, the districts where there is a successful K-8, are they districts that only have K-8, like Ashford, Columbia? So we're a bigger town.
So you're asking for the other report on, I mean, we're talking about two different things. One is
Yes.
facilities and one is the merits of
But they are
of that
linked.
system.
So, right, knowing what needs to be attended to in a building is important.
So can I answer? So when because we don't have the answers to all of this, but when we do the study, the feasibility study, so those are all questions that we can put that need to be answered. So we don't have the answer to all of those questions, and what Mr. DeSona brought up, that's the purpose of the study, to get an answer to those questions, because we don't have it at this time.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is the purpose of this RFQ to get an architect to look at the buildings or to get a consultant to look at the programming? Because it
No,
seems
this
to
is
be
not
meshed-
programming. This is
Well,
not programming.
right, but it says K through 8, K through 8, K through 8, K through 8. Everything on here says programming. Nothing
where's the
on here
program?
says. Everything says K to 8 school building
So-
plan.
Building.
An
but they said building.
architect to look at the facilities
Yes.
with the idea in mind that they would be K through 8 schools.
You said here building plan, building,
Right.
all building.
But I
all
don't want to
building.
limit us to just K through 8 if we haven't decided as a board. So that's why that was a concern for me.
And-
So we're looking for a consultant to talk about educational opportunities, not an architect to talk about facility status.
Well, we can do that, Mrs. Lambert, but that was not the directive given in the planning and design meeting. The discussion was that they wanted to look at the possibility K through 8. I can add whatever we want to add to the feasibility study tonight. Kay has not gone out, and I'm willing to do that. But we have followed, and I have followed, what was the directive of that night from the building and design committee. Everything can be added. But this right now was to look at the buildings only. Can both of them occur concurrently? Definitely. One is looking at program, one is looking at building, are two different things. Can they occur at the same time? Definitely, yes, they can occur at the same time. And the question is very valid, I think, before, and I remember brought up the statement, and I made the concern that, are we looking only to go to K through it because of building? That should not be a good reason enough to look to
It
go
should
through a
be
K.
programmatic.
It should be programmatic. And I said in the meeting that we should be very mindset and mindful that those collapsing building or putting building together should not be the primary reason why we should go through a K through 8.
Right.
And I still believe that.
Right.
But as the board is my boss, I am following the directives and do what you guys asked me to do.
So if I'm hearing this discussion, there are two different pieces to this. There is the facilities, the review of the, what would need to happen physically to buildings if we were
K through 8.
to make them K through 8. And then a desire to get information from, it's a different skill set
Yes.
to do the other thing, which
Program.
is to talk about the programmatic benefits
Of a
for
K
the
through.
students and the faculty and the district and outcomes and all that sort of stuff. And learning from experience in other districts that have done this.
Yeah.
That's a different
And
study.
we started working in that, and I stopped, but we had started working in that. I even look at companies across the state, school district already across the state that are making some transition. So I could just go back and revamp that and start doing that immediately. That's not a problem. To put both of them out is not an issue. Or to put one out first, if you want to learn about the program first. I think building should not drive this decision. I mean, this is my opinion, I'm not the board. But I think building should not drive this decision. What should drive the decision is this the best course of action for the district.
But to Murphy's point, we don't want to take too long because we have a lot of pressure on us to try to figure out the master
You
plan.
can put both of them together,
What do people think about that?
put them out together.
Yes, Mike?
Well, I agree with that, but also, to Ms. Galucci's point, are there any numbers with the students that were moved?
Could be.
Back to the elementaries.
What year was that? Do you know what year they were moved?
That was
You're Vanamosky.
12?
Yeah, I think my son was the last fifth grade class, and he's now a senior.
So it was during Adamowski's.
It's the year of Vanamosky, yes.
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
I think we need to look at the whole district, not just one group of students, because we don't change the whole, changing the whole K through 8 composition for one group of students to do better is
Right.
not valid.
But that would be part of what we
Just
get
to
in the
see,
report, is that kind
did
of
it
information
help,
too,
did it hurt,
hopefully.
what-
Yeah.
What happened?
The sixth grade, for those of you guys who are new, the fifth graders that were at the middle school were moved back to the elementary schools because we saw a sharp drop-off in it was CMTs then, their mastery scores when they made that transition to the middle school. So we moved them back to the middle school in hopes that they needed another year maybe to be a little more nurtured to do well on those scores, and maybe by the time they were in sixth grade, they were ready for it to see if we had the same drop-off. I think that's the data we're looking for.
Right.
If we now have the drop-off in sixth grade, that year doesn't matter, and we could put the fifth graders back in the middle school. It was a multi-year. Of course, we're using different tests than we used back then and that kind of stuff, but we can see if there's that same significant drop-off between those two groups. I just want to explain it to people who may not have been on the board then.
One thing that we cannot learn that would be useful, maybe we can use data from districts that have K-8 schools, is whether a K-8 school avoids the drop-off altogether. Because it is possible that we just move the drop from the
fifth
fifth
to
grade to
sixth.
the sixth grade.
Right.
Right.
But if a K-8 school manages to avoid the drop-off altogether, then that's where you get a gain. But the other thing about K-8 is that Barrows is a K-8 school, and it's got 600 of our students. As I understand it, our plan is to turn the dual language school into a K-8 school, and that will have a substantial fraction of our students. So we're going to have something around, 40% of our students in total in K-8 anyway? Does it really matter? Does it really make sense to have a district that's partly K-8 and partly not? That's
That's another
question.
consideration, yes. So I think what I'm hearing, though, is that we'd like both to be happening simultaneously. Some information for us on the programmatic advantages of a K-8 schools. And, obviously when we make the final decision, we'll be considering the kind of things that you're saying and Mary's saying, that people around the table have been saying. And then we'll also try to have facilities
and-
worked
and
out.
so when you
so
do-
there are two different RFQs,
Yes.
though.
And so when you do the study of the programmatic, if that's the decision, K-8, in the study will come out the background of the school district. So in the study, they will take into consideration what the district had in the past, what year. So all is that part of the study. We just don't have all the answer because we're not conducting the study right now.
Right.
But once we put out the study, all those things will come to light.
One more question, if I may.
Yes.
Do we have anything budgeted for these two studies?
No.
So how are we going to pay for them?
It's not budgeted, but I will be looking for some money. I know one area already that I can take some money. There was an area that we budgeted for architectural services, and so that one will cover at least the first RFQ.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm still unconvinced that a K-8 is necessarily good, but one of the first concerns I had about the K-8 is how it would fit in our buildings. So if the scope of the RFQ was just to see how a K-8 might fit in our buildings, I don't see how you're going to fit K-8 in the middle in Windham Center. And then you throw in the fact that you want to do a magnet school with dual language, and where's that going to fit? I can see that on a limited notion, but I'm also very concerned about the money. Now we talk about the money. We just came out from a finance committee meeting that looks like we might already be 1.4 million in the hole as we sit here. So to add more expenses to this before we've addressed the other ones also concerns me. But I would, as long as the scope of the RFP, as long as we can find the money for it, which I'd want to know before we do it, and the scope is just how does that program fit in the buildings, I'm happy with that. Then we can, because you're right, talking about K-8 without knowing if it'll fit in our buildings is kind of, it's.
Yeah, right.
So we would like two RFQs and an indication from you about how they're going to be paid for, so that we're assured that we can do it.
Sure.
Okay?
So there's, when we put the RFQ, we're not putting out any money. When you accept the RFQ is when you have to
Right.
get the money. Okay? So and then the RFQ that will tell us, and if we said, okay, we don't have money to this, we can't find the money, then we just don't respond, we don't do anything. So the RFQ itself put out there is just
Right.
Tracy Youngberg and myself and Aratna's time doing it, overtime. So there's no money there. But once you decide and you approve it or you accept it, then
Right.
yeah.
Right. So
And then we have to look-
how
yeah,
would we
yeah.
pay
It
for
says
that?
anticipated award date of February 14th, which gives you just a little bit more than a month to find money.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about finding money for
Two things.
two things.
Well, I don't know. This one I think will be in the range of the 20,000. This one would be in the first one in the range of 20, 24, 25. The other one, I'm still looking at what that one could. I'm checking around to see what that could be.
Okay. Can
But
we
I'd
move
still
on?
like to take a look at it before it gets.
Yes.
I'd be
we-
happy
yeah.
to send it to you.
Thank you.
But I do say that in the past, the board have never, but we have been to take a look at it. I'm happy to send it to you.
Abs- Absolutely.
Okay.
Probably couldn't hurt for you to send it to us all, just so we all get.
I
a
will send it
chance
to you.
Yeah.
Right, definitely. Because RFQ and
But people,
RSP.
but if people get it, they need to respond,
What?
like,
Yeah,
expeditiously.
Yeah, RFQ and RFP follow a process. It's a very, it's a very simple process. Introduction, description of the scope of the work. It's a process that have to follow what need to be in there. Okay, so I'm not going to spend much time, but just to let you know, the transportation RFQ is coming out. M&J is due June 30th, so we plan to get that out to you, and you see that's the timeline that is there also.
Does their contract say when they have to be notified if they're not going to have next year's contract?
I don't know the exact date. I have to check that. Chris, do you know that?
I don't know that offhand. I can.
It just occurred to me. I don't mean to put you on the
We're
spot.
going to look into that, okay?
Okay. Thank you. I don't mean to put you on the spot. It just occurred to me
I
that we
think
had
it
to-
said something about the contract need to be, I think it was like 90 days, Chris, 90 days?
I'll take a look.
Okay, 90
I
days.
might have it on my drive.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. The other one, Steps Academy update, I've been in contact with the State Department of Education. I did send you a little bit of information in my weekly packet. I did not send you the entire email in my weekly packet, but a response from Kathy Dempsey was explained very in detail that the Department of Education is still committed to providing that money to the district as soon as it's become available, that the Finance Advisory Council have not met, and they only meet several times per year, and they will not be meeting until
Till the spring.
Lamont take office. Mr. Lamont, I believe he took office today, so the meeting in the spring, and as soon as that take place, but that money is set aside and committed from the State Department of Education for Windham Public School. So I have confidence that we'll get it. I don't think we'll get it before April.
That's the $400,000.
That's the $400,000, correct.
But have they also been clear about the ECS money?
I have not, when I'm sending the email to her, I did not address the ECS. I will address it tomorrow. Now, as I said to you before, the ECS comes through the town.
Yes, but
Usually, yeah.
they have to send it to the town before we can
Exactly.
debate with the town about how the money is.
So I'm asking
It
Chris
has to get to the town first.
So I'm asking Chris to be very vigilant.
Yes.
When that comes, because they may not tell me anything. They don't necessarily send me an email. It will come through the town, and so I'm asking
Well,
Chris to.
it will if the state actually sends it, so
Right.
I guess we need to make sure that the state's actually going to send it to the town.
Yeah.
Mike has a question.
Lynn?
Yes?
Mike and
Sorry.
It's okay.
I was
Uh,
writing a note to myself.
okay.
I wasn't listening to you.
It's
Go,
good.
I mean, I wasn't looking up. Go
Finish
ahead.
your note. I remain extremely concerned about this. I would feel a lot more comfortable if our board chair wrote to their board chair about the discomfort this board has over a missing $400,000 or $500,000, and then we get some formal reassurance. I'd like to see some communication
Okay.
from our chair, our board to their board, that, and maybe even include Representative Johnson, because right now, we're getting, yes, it's going to come, and they're going to do it, they're going to vote for it in April, but that assumes a whole array of things that can happen between now and then with the budget deficit, the new governor, possibly a new commissioner of education, a number of things. I just really think we as a board, and I'm not reducing Dr. Garcia's input at all, but there's a staff level discussion and a board level discussion. I'd like to see you, as a chairman of our board, write a letter to their board saying, we need reassurances.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
So,
happy to do that, Mark. And I'll CC you guys on it.
so another project that I think is a great one, this is one of my favorite, is the Storyline project that will take place here at Cary Gallery with our third graders. Every year we have this project at the Cary Gallery, and I'm not going to go through all the detail. I just want to say I invite you to go and see the wonderful art of our students. I have been there every year that I've been a superintendent, and I always leave uplift by what I see of the artwork of our student. These are artists that work with our students during the school year, and so you have them working with our students, librarians, they work with, different, and so I think, before just telling you about it, I think January the 9th, there will be display, and the Cary Gallery, and it's right downtown, I believe, downtown?
January 17th,
I'm
not
sorry,
January
17th,
9th.
not 19th.
Today's the 9th.
Yeah.
17th. She read it off the top of the memo. It's okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I had it right.
Here's the flyer that is
Yeah.
circulating.
So I don't want to spend time talking about it. I think let's talk about it once you go and see the wonderful art the wonderful artists the Picassos that we have.
Thank you.
You know, yes, the Picassos that we have. Yes, yes.
Actually, one of the great assets in this community is the population of artists that are present, and in particular, Ms. Wanuski and Ms. McClintock have been associated with this program for a number
Yeah.
of years. They're quite remarkable, and I think that I would like to see the board find some way to provide some direct appreciation to these artists who are creating this program for our young people, because they're a valuable asset, and they don't have to do this, and they do.
I'm pretty sure we can get that appreciation to them. It's always a fantastic event. You always go, yeah. And for your information, I think this is another good thing that's going to happen in our district. The Mission of Mercy, that's going to take place here in Connecticut in April 10 and 11. And they're asking to use our facilities. So they bring the entire dental clinic, and this is free to all community members. And they do this in different communities across Connecticut, and it's really, really well attended. And so,
Be prepared to stand in line
For a long time, yeah.
for a long, long time. If you're going, you need to be prepared to stand in line for hours, because there are so many people who don't have dental insurance.
I know.
I mean, I know from my job, I work with the Mission of Mercy folks, and I've been to their dental clinics, and they have literally hundreds of people waiting in line to get dental care. So, but you should spread the word in the community. I'm assuming they're going to do that.
They want to do that. They want to have the flyers and everything. We just provide them the location, and they went to do the rest.
And they're going to be looking for volunteers, too.
Volunteers, right,
So
yeah.
if anybody has some free time that weekend, even if it's just a few hours at a time, they're happy to have them.
The last time they did it in Torrington, they had about 700 to 800 people. So we expect that we'll get a lot of people. And then for your first reading, you have the SELA by Literacy. The SELA by Literacy is something that a new legislation that just came out in Connecticut, providing students that graduate that are bilateral and bilingual, and you'll seal on their diploma. And we have started the process here at Windham High School. And Aratna Mudambi are on the left already. Dr. Mudambi, again, here, have done some work with the State Department. We did some work with Kate to go over the language. And Kate was very happy with the language that we are using. And we do have some students already that will qualify this year for the seal of biliteracy. And that means that they are dominant in both languages. And they do have to take an assessment, and they do have to take some courses. So it doesn't come to them like that. It does come to them with some requirement. Now, Connecticut is a new state to join. There are lots of states that have joined this, like Washington State, California, Florida, New York, and some others. So we're very happy to have that students here will have a special designation on their diploma when they graduate, the SELA by Literacy. All right, now I don't know if you want to say something.
Do you want to come up and say anything about it?
No, I think Dr. Garcia pretty much covered it. It's a really exciting opportunity for students because we're going to be honoring
I think
the
you
fact-
should go to the mic, just so the public can hear.
Oh.
Thanks, I'm sorry.
So I said I feel that Dr. Garcia pretty much covered it. I think it's a really exciting opportunity for our students because so many of our students are bilingual, and it's a chance to honor the gifts that they bring to our community and to our school.
Are there any other districts in the state that are already on this road?
There are Glastonbury is one of them. They awarded quite a few. Stamford is another one that's on there. So we do have several districts in the state
Glastonbury, the first district
to do it.
to do it last year, yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Can someone check the link that was sent in our packet? Because every time I tried it at home, I tried it at work, and now I just tried it here again. It comes 404 error, page not found. So I'm not sure
What
what happened.
link?
The link that was at the bottom of that article.
Oh,
But did you
Oh.
try it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get it to work either place. The Connecticut portal, ct.gov, SDE. I couldn't get that to work
Did
anywhere.
you
so
try
somebody-
Googling
I didn't try the link.
Sealed by Literacy Connecticut?
I did.
just in case?
It didn't
Okay.
come up with the Connecticut State Department of Ed. It came up with some news articles about it, but I didn't come to. No.
I did go there again today.
Nope. Well, I tried it from here. Maybe it's mistyped. or
Maybe
something.
you could just resend it to us. That would be great. Thank you.
I thought it was me, and I thought, oh, when I get here, I'll hit on it, and it'll come up, and it's still not coming up. So. Thank you.
Move things around a lot also, so every time I go to the State Department website, I have trouble. I'll send it
That's
again.
reassuring. So anything else for the superintendent before we move away from the reports? Thank you. That ended up being heftier than we thought it might be, but appreciate everybody's input. And now we're going to go on to the discussion item, which is the discipline data report.
Yeah, so for tonight, we tried to give you an item of discussion and for every board meeting, and so items that during the scope of the year you want to have information and to keep you updated. Tonight, I asked Mr. Neil Weathers, the Director of Research, Accountability, and Assessment, to provide you with some information regarding in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension in the district. What I will do, I will interject when Mr. Neal is presenting to talk a little bit about what strategies we are implementing in the district to address discipline and social and emotional in our school district. Neil, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So good evening, Happy New Year. So we're going to talk about the discipline update at this point. So the way I set this presentation up was from the September board retreat. There was a series of slides that gave updates on suspension incidents. So what I did is gave a current how we're doing compared at this point in the year from that slide I set up in September. So the first slide we're showing here is in-school suspensions by year. And how I set up all the slides, we actually added a school from the retreat in September. We have Windham Public Schools as an entire district, which actually includes all our buildings here plus the private outplacements as well. So it's our full enrollment. We have Windham High School, Windham Middle School, and we've included the STEM Academy, Barrows, as well. You'll notice there's an asterisk for 2018-19, and that is because obviously those are these are our current estimates, internal numbers as of the end of the calendar year last year, and that will change. As you can see, when it comes to in-school suspension incidents, you can see that we are at 212 as of the end of the year, and so we're pacing. We're about 42% of the school year at the time this was taken. So it looks like we're coming under for that compared to the year before. I kept the 13-14 year in there just to show how many in-school suspensions the district had not too long ago. And we actually have about a couple more students than we did a few years ago. You can see the high school, middle school, and the STEM Academy is trending down.
So,
Here in out of
Oh,
schools.
Dr. Gomez, a question.
Oh, sorry, Dr.
so in 2013, we have 1114
Incidents.
incidents. I'm
In-school
seeing-
suspensions, yeah.
Yeah, okay. In 2017-18, we have 288. Right?
Oh, this is the district. This one here, the entire district. This one here, and this one is the middle school.
Okay. And the red is what?
This is the middle school. So this is the entire district, high school and middle school.
The red represents the 2013-14 year, and underneath is which building it represents.
Yeah. So this is district, high school, middle school.
Oh, okay.
Was there a reason that Barrows was broken out from the other
Well,
schools and
so typically when we do the discipline report, that is a good question. We generally do the whole district. In the past, we've done the two secondary buildings, meaning the high school
Yeah.
and the middle school, and that generates most of our discipline incidents, like a vast majority. So there's been some questions in the past asking to tease Barrows out of other reports the board has requested. So I figured just to be proactive, I included him in this report. Any request, I could take it out as well. And you could see relative, they're lower than the other two buildings, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to include. But the elementaries, I wouldn't recommend including because the numbers are so small. There would be zeros in some of the categories.
Okay, I'll put it back, okay. So anyway, in 2013, we have 1114, right?
For the district.
Incident.
Yep.
For the district.
Yeah.
And then in 2018-19, we had 212. Is that what?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
correct.
So do we know why? What caused the, the drop in incidents or
Well,
suspension?
the year hasn't finished yet.
He's going to finish,
Half
he's
a
going to
year.
tell us.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
would
one
you
of
wanna
the
tell
slides
us?
we address we don't give all 212 stories, but we have like the majority of the reasons why.
Yeah, and the year hasn't finished yet. 18-19 hasn't finished yet.
Yeah, and that's the thing too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll explain that after. That's a
Big,
good
it's a
question.
big, so we're doing much better, I guess.
Well, we drop in here, yeah, we went up in 15,
Currently,
16.
we're trending in in-school suspensions to be lower. That's
Lower, yeah.
what I would say. So, out-of-school suspensions.
Can you make sure you hold the mic up closer?
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. I'm used to not needing a microphone to speak, so big mouth at the mic. Okay, so out-of-school suspensions by year. Here you can see something different. In particular, at the middle school, it's their out-of-school suspensions are higher. You notice their in-school suspensions were lower, and sometimes we do see that when one of the forms suspension incidents increases, the other one decreases. I've noticed that in the high school and in the middle school in the past years I've been here. One thing I'll say too, it also looks like for Windham Public Schools that we're trending, it looks like we might pass 313, but again, when you back it out, and that's why when you look at the 5 years prior, you could see we're still trending to be much lower than we have historically in the past. In some years, we have a dip in suspension incidents, and then we have a little regression the following year, and that's why we show multiple years like that. The other thing, the high school looks like it's trending to be close to what it was last year. And then when you see expulsions by year, right now we're looking, it's January, but we're looking if things held to be less than last year. And then the slide that I include, and this is in state reporting, and sometimes people don't look at it this way, and that's why I wanted to show. I combine all three of the suspension incidents, out of school, in school, and expulsion. And when you see that, so at 42% of the year, we had 444 total suspension incidents for the district, which is, looking like if things were to continue in a linear fashion, and there's no guarantee that happens, but we would perform below the 993 last year. And if you look way back, even last year was less than half of what it was in 2013-14 for suspension incidents. That's not detentions or other sorts of discipline suspension incidents.
I think the next slide is very important. I know this is a question that the board is going to have.
Well,
what are those incidents?
Right.
What are those incidents? So we're giving you the numbers, and so now we're giving you here the type of incident, why kids get suspended and why kids get expelled. So you can go ahead.
So this particular slide was actually the hardest one to construct for this presentation, and the reason is the most frequently occurring behavior. So when discipline is submitted that we enter for our PSIS system, our student information system, you could have multiple reasons, right? And then also sometimes some of the causes look different by over time. Like what you would call disruption at a primary grade level may be called a different offense at an upper grade level. That being said, with all that just information I'm giving you, the four most frequently occurring as of December 2018, so these approximations could definitely change. We have currently about 25% of them are from disruption and disruptive behavior, 20% from insubordination, 15% from fighting, altercation, or physical aggression. And again, that altercation is physical in nature, different than a verbal altercation. And then number 4 actually you could argue is actually higher on the list because skipping class is at 15%, but that can only happen in 2 of our buildings because we don't have the passing. You can't skip class in our elementary school, so to speak. Or if you can, they haven't put anyone. I checked. They haven't done it yet.
So I think this slide is very enlightening to see what are the incidents. Yeah, they don't come back, right? To see that insubordination and disrespect and disruption are the 2 biggest incident that we have in our in our school system.
And those rankings could change obviously in June because it's still early in the year, depending. And then the last slide here, or before we get to the conclusion slide, I'm going to let Dr. Garcia take this with the strategies that we are working on.
So this data of the type of incident is not new to me. I've been looking over years the type of incident, and always it comes out at the end of the year that altercation, physical altercation, is not the #1 incident in the school district for the last couple of years. So we don't see a lot of that in our schools. What we do see is the disruptive behavior and the insubordination of disrespect coming always over the years. Because of that, this year we tried to put some new strategies in place, and I'm going to stay right here, but one of the things we want to do this year is that the social and emotional initiative is a big piece of what we're doing in our school district. A couple of months ago, I informed you that we were asked to be part of a grant called Aware Grant, and it was a grant that the State Department was putting out, and they invited 3 school districts to be part of that grant. And the purpose of that grant is how do we support social and emotional K through 12. We were very happy to be selected because we already were talking about restorative practices and RULA. So a couple weeks ago, the state called us and told us that we were selected with some other school district to be part of this initiative, gave us some guidelines, and one of the guidelines is that we need to look at social emotional K through 12. They will give us money to hire a coordinator or coordinator of the project, K through 12, and so we are very happy to say, well, we want to try to addressing much more in a much more detail. This position will be under Mr. Pavon Department, Trauma in our students. So try to help them. I think part of this respect and comes from not understanding some of the rules and the protocols. We also trying to conduct an audit of our behavior. When does it happen? Same that we look at attendance, that the day before a holiday or half days, we have high attendance issue. We're looking at, okay, when does these disruptive behavior happen? Did it happen beginning of the day or end of the day? And do we have a building that happen more than others? You know, at the elementary school, it happened more in what building or high school. The training in ruler and restorative practice is ongoing, not in all the schools. Middle school has it more than the high school. The high school, though, started with their staff in restorative practices. But we're hoping now that we can get somebody from the initiative, the AWARE initiative, that person would help us to really put this in place. However, the district is creating a district team for social and emotional, and we asked in each school to also create a team for social and emotional. That way, as we roll it out district-wide, every school can implement it based also on their needs. And so currently, we're training teachers and staff in restorative practice and social and emotional. Not all the schools that have received training so far is Natchog Middle School and the high school. The high school has not got the ruler. Did high school get the ruler? They started the ruler? I know that they restorative practice and the high school. We do have a team of teachers and administrators that are trained that went to Yale this summer. So we have about 17 people between teachers and administrators that attended, and that's the team that is formed here in the school district, at the district team, and then we have in the school. So this is a hard task, but I think we're addressing it differently from those expelling kids and really addressing the needs of the students, and also another piece, the family. The parents will be part of this K-12 social and emotional initiative. So we're looking for someone that have clinical background and also management background that can connect our students with services in the community and connect with our parents.
Do you have a question? Do you have a hand up?
Question is, these are the numbers of suspensions, but how many of these are unique students as opposed to the same student generating multiple?
So I didn't calculate that yet because of some of the we do it in about a month when we do the Alliance report. I can share that with you. I usually try to save the unique rate because, like I pointed out, there's an estimate involved when we do this, so the numbers, so that fluctuates a little bit. But I can give you an estimate. I was afraid to compare the unique rates with the estimate because I noticed I've tried it a couple times internally and it fluctuates.
But
Because if I recall correctly, I mean, if you look at 2013 and 14, that looks awful. But as I recall, it was really only a handful of students that generated most of those numbers. And
I think you're not wrong, but I do know the unique rate was also higher that year as
Yes,
well
yeah,
than it
very
is
high.
now. Like you're correct, but the unique rate was also higher. If my memory serves.
But as we do the Alliance report next month, we can get that information, because we have to do it for the Alliance report.
Yeah, and when we do it, I'll make sure.
Yeah,
You get
I'd
it.
be interested in
That's a
looking at
retreat
that
item.
because, I mean, it's good that we have these
Yeah.
programs to
Item.
deal with student frustration. Because sometimes students are frustrated even if they don't act out and, it shows up in their grades, but it doesn't show up in behavioral or disciplinary reports. But it may be that we're expending a lot of energy in a really small number of students.
Right. Yes, and so, yeah, I'll definitely give you the update, and obviously at the next retreat, we'll have that. The other thing I was looking at, too, when we were talking about the middle school is, I think it was Miss Baguetto this morning when I ran into her, we were both at the same time coming up with the idea of also the population shifts are different for incidents, so you might have a rise in incidents, but the middle school has 55 more students than it did last year. So you have to keep there's a lot of fluctuations and variables in all these numbers. That's why looking at it over several years obviously was helpful. But yeah, I'll make sure I get you the unique rate. That's a fair
I guess
point.
I'm gonna come back with my.
Right, I was going to say, I don't think
We
we've
didn't,
answered
I'm
your
ready.
question.
Yeah, I
Right.
think, okay, I'm gonna try to simplify this. I see, like, for example, total suspensions, incidents by year, okay, from 2013 to 2019, the drop was 80%. We have 80% less suspensions. What is it due to? Is it due to strategies that we have, or because we are more lenient, or because the rules changed? Why? I mean, we have an 80% drop
So
in
some
5 years.
Okay.
So
Right.
what are we doing?
So,
you want
so I do think that we were more cognizant, that we were very punitive in the beginning of the years. I wasn't here in 2013, but I came in 2014. And this was a big issue because we're very punitive. I mean, kids have to have consequences, and we don't want to send out consequences. But over the years, we have trained our staff in culture competences, number one. The schools have revamped their policies, their handbook and discipline. We have tried to look at ISS differently, and we continue to look. So we have done some. We have put some strategies in place. For example, I will say that since we put restorative practice at the middle school last year, we have seen a drop at the middle school in how they handle discipline and how students respond. Yes. So it hasn't been done in 1 year; it has been over a period of years.
And just to add to what Dr. Garcia is saying, some of that too is the strategies, but also some of in the past, the traditional models had out of school suspension
Yes.
for certain consequences when keeping the student in. So early in some of those, you saw spikes in school, but a decrease in out of school. So often what we are seeing in some of this is you see that initial spike and then both come down over time, which we saw in the graphs.
And I do want to say, I think the administrators have taken a much stronger role also in supporting teachers in the classroom, and that has a lot to do. And in school suspension, ISS is seen differently, particularly at the middle school. It has become not only a place where kids just go and stay, it has become a different. And the guidance counselor, I will say, the guidance counselor are working very much harder with the kids and the social workers in the school.
So the other question is, how much impact did Path Academy have on these numbers? Because a lot of the difficulty we had in 13-14 was students who were frustrated. Frustration leads to disruption and insubordinate behavior and things, and they just weren't successful in this environment. Path Academy was at least a different environment, but it also moves some of these students who were the basis for a lot of these statistics to a different place where they're no longer in our statistical pool.
Well, let me answer that a little bit. Let me take a shot at that one. Well, in the last couple of years, Path Academy students will leave, and after October 1st, they will come back to us. That has been a pattern of the Path Academy. After October 1st, they will send all back to us. So I cannot say, and you know why October 1st. So, okay. So October 2nd, we will have them back in our building. So they'll be gone September, and October 2nd, they're back in our building. And that has been an issue that we have had tremendous discussion with Path Academy. I think this year, because we do have the alternative school, I have the opportunity to place some students over there. So we have placed some students from the high school, nobody from the middle school, from the high school in our STEP Academy that are where that environment is much more better and progressive for them.
Okay, and are we including the students in our statistics now?
So we did not do that one.
I didn't tease out Step Academy for this, but they are absolutely in the whole numbers. I actually, they're on that beautiful laptop with the pi symbol on it. I have the information.
So they're in the whole numbers, but not, you don't have them in the whole numbers?
Yeah, they're in the whole numbers, and initially I wasn't sure whether to include. What happens too when you have schools at low numbers, the other thing you have to be mindful of, that I try to keep is data privacy rules, and because if you have very low numbers, you could inadvertently be
put in the information
violating that, right? So I'm mindful of that. So that's why I toggled the idea of.
So they are included in the total, though.
Yeah, absolutely in the district total.
Okay.
Mary, you had a question?
I just had a question on what does RULER stand for?
RULER is a social and emotional initiative that came from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, where they help students to recognize their emotion, to understand their emotion, label their emotion.
They have to have
Let them finish.
Understand, label and express your emotion. Right. So basically,
What was the last one?
Regulate. So basically, is helping students to understand their behavior and to regulate their behavior. Particularly what it is.
It's Orwellian. I'm afraid they should have thought of something a little more positive.
So Mary would not have chosen
come
that
up with
acronym. Yes.
What you think right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Went to Catholic school, you shudder a little bit when you hear that.
My husband went to school in England, and they used to cane students. They still did.
So, any other questions? Yes.
Have you got any staff feedback on this new emotional support systems and the restorative justice systems, like climate in the buildings? Because I've heard the middle school behavior has become a little bit rumor, just from teachers and parents and stuff, that the behavior at the middle school's gotten a little bit worse. Not that the numbers reflect that necessarily, but the climate of the building, how are we feeling? And here at the high school, we're down a security guard. So are we expecting that to impact our numbers at all?
So the first question, no, we haven't done a official formal survey to teachers about it. I'm pretty sure we will be doing something. What I've heard at the middle school from teachers is that the restorative practice, for example, do not work with all kids. And so we need to look at that differently. The RULER, however, has been very positive at the middle school. Teachers and feedback when I speak with new teachers and my teacher advisory group feel that, particularly at the middle school, kids need to be taught to self-regulate themselves. And so that is important. But they do feel that the restorative practice maybe needs something in between for the students that are beyond restorative practice, a small group of students that we have. And in the high school, I have not done any formal survey, but what I have gathered from the high school is on a regular basis, they're questioning why they have not been rolled out to the pace of the high school, meaning middle school. They want it done sooner and sooner. So at the high school, we were slow with the process because of other things that were taking place, and they were not too happy that they were slow with the process because the high school team went to training this summer. So when they came back, they wanted it to be rolled out right away, and we waited a little bit, but we continue now in January to roll it out. So in that sense, I would say it's been positive that they want it, but we have not had a formal survey.
One other thing, I forgot where I was going, hold on. Go ahead, I'll come back to it. It just fell off the top of my head.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to raise? We can come back if you remember what your question is. Okay?
Maybe I do.
Okay, you do remember? Okay.
I know that there are hormones and passing schedules and everything else that change when you go from elementary to middle. But why is there such a sharp uptick in the behavior issue when it gets to the middle that continues into the high school? Is there a way to start with the sixth graders? And I know you've done sixth grade academy, and I think last year they saw a little bit better with behavior doing it that way. Are there other things that we're looking at besides the ruler and the other supports that we're putting in place? But are there other ways of looking at it that we stop it from starting to get out of control? Because I've heard from middle school teachers historically, since my oldest was there, that you can always tell what school a student came from by how they behave when they get to the middle school without looking at their transcript. You can tell this one came from the middle school, from Sweeney and Natchog and Windham Center and North Windham, just by how they behave. And not always in bad ways, sometimes in really good ways, that different tools they've been given depending on their principal and their staff and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, it seems like, and I know there are things like hormones and stuff like that, but it seems like the wheels start to come off the bus or the plane or whatever they're on when they get to the middle school. And is there a way to start capping that before it starts getting out of control?
So I don't have any empirical research study. Miguel is a psychologist, so maybe you want to help me. But I do think a couple things. A simple example is like when you have kids at home, and if you have 3 kids, the older one may be very serious, and the second one you ask what the heck happened, and and you're giving the same type of feedback, love, et cetera, et cetera. So it does cohort of kids. Some cohort of kids are much more active than other, and maybe this batch of cohort of 6th grade students are a little active than the other. The same thing happened at the elementary school. You will hear the principal say, oh, my 5th grade last year was fantastic. The 5th grade that I have this year, oh, it's much, much different and much more active. So I think it does depend on that. I also don't have an empirical study, but I do believe, and this is my experience as superintendent, I've been in this business for over 30 years, that by taking away a lot of space from the middle school students and now have them all, because middle school students, one of the things that they do need is their space. Middle school students do need their space. And by bringing the pre-K program there now, we have an entire wing that they cannot use. The main issue in the middle school when we said behavior issue has to do with the drama between the girls. I don't like you today. You're not pretty today. You're ugly tomorrow. You're not my friend today. Okay. And so you're walking down the hallway and, oh, she said I'm ugly. Oh, she said my hair is this. Oh no, he's my boyfriend too. So that's where it starts. And so the incidents start there, it spill into the classroom. And the teacher says, stop it, and they continue. So it's not altercation that they're fighting at the middle school. But I think that now is much less space for them to bolster their emotion, for them to communicate, for them to be together. I've been to the middle school, and I go every week, and when I look at the hallway now compared to the hallway last year, some hallways were empty last year. When I look at the hallway now, particularly in passing time, they are jam-packed with students, jam-packed.
Well, if we moved the 5th graders back, that would happen again.
I'm just giving you my opinion.
No, but I'm just saying, previously the 5th graders were there, and so the halls were just as packed, if not more so. So if we move the 5th graders back at some point, which I'm not opposed to, it was kind of an experiment, but it was a way of trying to help the students too, then we'd have that same, if we took out the pre-K and moved in, the 5th graders, we'd have that same crowding. And certainly there are state space standards. I'm just wondering if there are other factors that come in, and if there are other ways we can mitigate that. You have any idea why
the middle school?
I would just add, just from my own experience, that you have this in elementary schools, less of the upper grades, right? So 5th grade is 2 or 3, right? Yeah. And so those are the upperclassmen in elementary school. You bring all these students.
Do we have a mic
together.
from?
Miguel, do you have a mic?
Oh, sorry. Where is it?
Neil's got it.
Oh, Neil took it. Is it on?
Yep.
You bring all these students together in this larger environment. So now you have the same age student, right? Then you add the hormones. And so the behaviors are similar.
Okay.
And so I think that's just my own opinion on, without really doing any research on it. But and thereby you then begin to see the spilling of behaviors that begin to replicate.
Okay.
And they begin, so you have to there are some things that we should look at. Ruler and restorative practice are just two vehicles that we are piloting, and doesn't mean that they're going to be exhaustive. The social and emotional initiative that Dr. Garcia is mentioning is also going to bring some other ideas, and that's why we need somebody to coordinate that and do these studies so that we can move forward with other ways to handle those issues.
I do want to say that the district has seen an increase in issues starting from kindergarten this year. So if you ask me, compared to last year, there is a significantly increase in issues with students starting from kindergarten this year.
Would that be an argument for or against K through 8 schools then? Would that stuff start?
But what I'm saying
Could be a
You'd
four.
say
it could be a four, could be, but
Could be
again,
a four.
this is why we want to have to study.
Study
Right.
done,
Even
right.
if we said, get the mic again. Even if we said that it was a good idea,
Hold on, get the mic.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to belabor a point, but I
Yeah.
want to.
even if we said it was a good idea to do the K-8 schools, we have to do the facilities check because we may not have the facilities to be able to do it.
Right.
You know, so it's a catch-22. So I think it's a good idea, just to comment on what was said earlier, to do both of those initiatives simultaneously to get an idea of like programmatically as well as facility-wise. So,
Thank you, Mr. Pabon, I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Murphy and then Mary.
So there is one other thing that happens in around middle school these days that didn't happen to us, and that's social media.
Technology, oh yeah, they can text each other.
Well,
and Instagram and
since I've got
Facebook.
grandchildren, or going through that age, it's and parents differ at the age in which they hand their child a smartphone. But as soon as they have a smartphone, their capacity to harass each other becomes almost instant.
Exponential.
Yes.
And there's a whole, regardless of crowded hallways, there's a whole vibe there. And I wonder if at some point we need to think about having some way of monitoring, not individuals so much as just the level of what's going on there, because occasionally stuff is happening that, you read the stuff in the papers, things get out of hand. It would be nice if we had some way of catching that before it gets explosive.
I know our school resource officer often monitors
Yeah.
social media and
Rivera.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that way they know when things are coming down the pike, but you can't be exhaustive in that either.
No, I mean, there's hundreds of them and just a few of us. That's
Mary?
I'm sorry.
I wanted to say there is empirical research about recess, and that is a huge lack of students everywhere, and I would really promote including it, especially for middle school, but it should be there for elementary school children too. Children don't get enough physical activity or enough time outdoors, and that's a low-tech idea. Oh, and about the middle school, fifth grade did not have a sealed-off wing. So the pre-K has to be completely separated. So fifth and sixth grade shared hallways and things like that. So it's not the same kind of crowding, having the same composition that the school was built for.
No, it wasn't a criticism. I'm just saying if we add those students back, we'll find a similar sort of crowding if you add those 300 students back or whatever they are, 200 students.
Okay, is there anything else?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so I can't help but notice this big drastic drop in the school suspension at the STEM Academy. The out-of-school suspension, everything, expulsions.
Yeah, but the fifth grade or whatever is only like 40 students.
No, in
Yeah,
STEM
so-
Academy, they have 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, let's,
So,
Neil?
yeah, so basically, you're talking a total of their 6, 7, 8 is 180 students versus the middle school, which is 655 students. So there's a much smaller percentage of secondary, and the elementaries across the board, the K to 5s, have the general, generally speaking, are very low in terms of suspensions of any sort.
And they might be getting recess, too.
The elementary gets recess.
These aren't extrapolated by Windham students. This is all of Barrows.
All Barrows that are enrolled in our district, right? I didn't tease it out by
All the
residency.
kids from the other districts
These numbers
that
are
come
so
in.
small, really, it
Right,
doesn't make
that's
much
true.
sense.
Anything else before we move on? Yes,
Just one quick question.
Mark.
Can you do the data with an enrollment number as well? Because, as you point out, 1,100 in 13-14 is a high number, but I had that many more students, I think, in the system than I have in 17-18. So looking at this, 1,100 incidents compared to 1,000 students versus 200 incidents compared to 6 students.
And actually, it's so interesting you said that. Like I said, Ms. Baguetto and I were talking about that earlier today. We are actually, it's even a little more complicated than that, because if a student shows up and is in the district for 10 days and say gets a suspension in school, out of school otherwise, and then leaves, that counts with us. So what we really need to equate, and we could include that number, is not just the enrollment, is the number of total membership days. A membership day is when a student's present, because what we'll find, if you have a more transient school, you might have a vastly greater number of membership days, meaning greater opportunities when a student's there and could therefore be suspended. So what I can do is include those numbers the next time I do the report. Thank you for that.
But
feedback.
enrollment in those years was lesser than now. The enrollment has increased in 14-15.
Yes, we're about
increased.
roughly about 200 students
200
higher, I
students
think.
more, so more students now compared to those years.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we'll look forward to that updated information. Yep, thanks. So now we're on to committee reports. So let's start with finance and audit. And
Okay.
I don't want to shortchange the committee reports, but we have our attorney here also, and we have stuff to talk about still after the reports.
So we met this evening. We reviewed the first draft of the capital plan, or the capital improvement plan. I believe that plan gets submitted to the Board of Finance in March. So
You get it in
we looked
February.
at the first draft tonight. One of the items that is going to come at close to the top of our wish list is the roof at the North Windham School. It's at least 24 years old, and that may not be the whole roof. May be part. That may only be part of the roof. So some of the roof may be older than that. At any rate, it's old enough. But the main problem is it's starting to leak. And rather than wait until we have a situation like we had in Natchog School a few years ago, we'd like to get on top of that and get that roof addressed before the leaking gets critical. There are a number of other items, but we don't need to go into details. I do have, would like to request that the board add to the agenda the approval of one transfer item that wasn't on the list that we approved in December, because this is one small item that occurred at the end of December.
Okay,
I believe that our Director of Finance has a handout for the whole thing, so.
I'd entertain a motion to add to the action items, action on a budget transfer.
Do we have enough for everyone first?
Yeah, we're not going to take it up now. I'd like a motion to
So
add.
moved.
Seconded by Mike, made by Mark. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adding that action item to the agenda? The item's added as item, it would be 8D. Okay?
And the only other thing that we had on our agenda tonight was a review of the first half of the financials for the year. There is some ambiguity about because the budget that was passed on the third try was smaller than the budget that the board approved in March. We have had to make reductions from March to the amount that was approved at referendum. And there's some ambiguity about the status of the reductions that have been made, or whether they've actually been made to date. And so I've asked the finance director, and I think it's mostly personnel stuff, so finance and HR need to kind of get together and resolve some questions. I think the reductions have probably actually occurred. The question is validating or verifying that's the case. And there is also a substantial shortfall, that much of which will be made up if, in fact, the state delivers the money for the STEPS Academy, including the ECS money that goes with the students. If that happens, The remaining differences between the budget and the expenditures are things that can be addressed fairly, without too much difficulty, I don't think, in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's my report.
Any questions? Okay, school planning and design.
Yes, we met last Thursday. We meet at 5 o'clock on the first Thursday of the month. We got an update on some of the buildings, some of the things that are going on, including a list of when the most recent updates on all the roofs were done, which I asked for. That project can be done separate from a full renovation, and the one that was the most outstanding was the North Windham one, which has already begun to leak and has been patched by Silktown on various occasions over the past few years. We are fortunate at School Planning and Design that Tyler Griffin of the Board of Finance attends almost all of them, and he had asked for that list, and so we received it, and I handed a copy off to him as well, so he can go back to the Board of Finance and they can kind of plan for the next few years. There are 2 roofs currently eligible for re-roofing, North Windham and Windham Center, and then Sweeney is next in the line, but I think Sweeney is 5 or 6 years away from, I forgot to bring that with me tonight, 5 or 6 years away from qualifying for full reimbursements, which is at the 20-year mark. We talked about the maintenance building and the move from Kramer, which is on hold for a couple different reasons, some of which is being financial, some of which is being we can't pave the new maintenance building on the outside until the weather warms up a little bit. The paving companies have closed for the winter, and it's not a good idea to do it in really cold weather. We talked about the high school renovation. Dr. Garcia attended the high school renovation committee this past Monday. Mary, you were there, yes, and Ms. Galucci, and we worked with the construction manager. We had the mayor come and talk to us about PLAs and pros and cons, and we're going to discuss that. The town council will make an ultimate decision on that.
Does everybody know what PLA stands for?
Labor agreement.
Labor agreement.
Project labor
Project
agreement.
labor agreement, thank you. A PLA is a project labor agreement hiring local people, and there's some pros and cons to that. It was a discussion. The town council's been having discussions about that, but the mayor came to update the committee. We talked about, we have hired a owner's rep in Colliers, and they are waiting to finalize their contract, but they did attend. Talked about updating the ed specs, and Dr. Garcia says she hopes to have that for us at the next meeting as an action item for the board to approve new ed specs. And moving forward and doing some schematic stuff. Also, a site surveyor has been identified but not yet hired and hasn't gotten on the ground yet, and they've done a lot of different testing, including flow tests and stuff like that for emergency systems and things like that that we have to get going and to have a full scope. So that was a busy high school renovation committee meeting. And then we talked about the facilities master plan going forward. Can we do this in parallel with a consultant on K-8 or other forms of school design? Fryer had brought forward a proposal to continue their services. Apparently we're declining that at this time. And that was pretty much the basis of our meeting.
Are there any questions?
If I missed something, say something. Working off my notes.
There's a lot.
It's
We
a
have like
busy
hour and a half
meeting.
meetings, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then policy?
Hello, Happy New Year again. So the only thing we worked on last month was the seal of biliteracy, and that's it.
Okay.
And so we'll meet on the 24th at 5:30 in central office if anybody wants to come.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Any
The
questions
end,
for
nice and
policy?
quick.
Yes?
We talked about, in October, I believe, creating a policy to protect the health savings, the health benefits account, so that way it keeps a minimum percentage of money in there, and I haven't heard anything more
Well,
about
I told
that.
you the last time that we had 4 policies we were looking at, so we were waiting to, because we had a couple of them on hold. So we finally, 3 of them are knocked out now, as of this one being the 3rd.
Okay.
So, and also.
Are you going to be taking that up on January 24th at your meeting?
No, not yet, because we need some more information. We need information from, as Dr. Garcia said, from the town, I believe,
Oh, okay.
because it's not just something we could look at without information.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so it's something we could probably
It's
look
in,
at
it's in the works
in
then.
February, maybe, but we need more information.
Your meeting January 24th?
Yes.
That's the night of the superintendent awards.
What time is our awards? 7,
Yeah,
or o'clock
so,
to 7.
so
You can
their
meet
meeting
in
will
there.
Yeah, our
probably be
meeting will
over
be
by
over
then.
by then.
Okay.
It's 5:30.
All right.
We're usually done by 6:30, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do want to add that you guys have spent a lot of time looking at some Barrows policy now that we're going to lottery and things like that. So
Right.
you guys are spending a couple of meetings looking at, discuss Barrows policy.
did
mean,
say
lot-
that.
lottery
Yes.
lottery policies, by the way, not Barrows lottery.
Okay,
Yes, so.
so we'll look forward to a report on that. Yes, Mike?
They're looking at the Barrows lottery policy. Is that looking to change the policy?
Well, there are lots of questions now that the lottery is taking place, and people had lots of questions. So the committee spent a lot of time reviewing the policy in order to have a clear understanding, in order to respond.
To individual
We don't bring in
questions.
anything to change to you,
Okay.
or the committee, I don't think so, but
No.
there were lots of questions, and they had to spend time looking at the policy, going back to 2014,
Right.
looking at different policies for Barrows to come up with some answers.
One thing that would change that is if we decide to pursue, as Mr. Desanya brought up a meeting ago, making pre-K at Barrows available to Windham students. So that would mean that Windham students would have their lottery at pre-K, and the sending district students would have their lottery at K, and we would have to lay that out on policy.
Right, but that's not what they're talking about right now. Nothing to do with that.
They got other issues,
Right.
but that one's
Yeah.
just one to add to that.
And the other thing, I don't know if it's something to look at, but our teacher preference policy. You know, if we have teachers in the district that have students that want to attend, and you know, if there's positions open for them kids, and they're currently in another program, they should, you know, if there's a spot open, they should probably be able to move over to the Barrows.
Would you,
There's
would
a
you,
policy for that.
would you like an update on what that policy is?
Yes.
Given to you?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And what do you mean by another
Thanks.
program?
Well, you know, say there's a teacher, or, you know, that has a student in another program,
Her own child.
her or his own child,
Right.
and they want to move them over to the Barrows. If there's
You mean another school?
right.
From another school
From
to
another
Barrows.
school.
Right.
So we, just to, before we get started down that road, let's just clarify what the
That's what I
what
wanted
the
to know,
current
what the
teacher
policy,
preference
how it actually
policy is.
reads.
And then we'll go from there,
Right.
okay?
Policy.
If you have any further questions.
Once.
Yeah,
It's a
we're not,
lottery.
we're not gonna unpack it right now,
Right.
okay? We have a lot more to
We
get
have
through
more
this
to
evening,
unpack.
but,
Right.
We'll get back to you on that.
but
Thank you.
We'll email you.
anything else from policy?
No, the end.
Okay, thanks. Executive Committee, we had a couple of months where we didn't meet, but we did meet last week. We have, in case people didn't figure it out, where our meeting date scheduled for 2019 is the first Wednesday of every month at 6 PM here in the central office.
The executive committee?
Yes, yeah,
Wednesday.
first Wednesday of the month at 6 PM. So we had a meeting last week, and we talked about the upcoming budget process. Just sort of went over the calendar, talked about the kinds of things that we need to make sure are happening. We talked about we finalized the tool for the superintendent evaluation that we will be using this year, later this year. And we also talked about, those were the main items that we talked about on the agenda.
Workshop, the different workshops.
And then we reviewed what we had talked about at our retreat in September, the things that we had laid out that are priorities for us to address as a board this year. And we took a look at that list, figured out what we had already talked about, and then plotted out a schedule for our workshops of our Board of Ed meetings between now and the summer. So so that's good. We gave some guidance to the superintendent about what we'd like to have covered at the various workshops. So we're not sort of winging it from month to month. Now, that can always be changed if there's something more pressing that comes up that we need to do a workshop on. But So that's where we are right now. We'll be meeting again on the first Wednesday of next month. Any questions?
Just one.
Yes.
I mean, as I recall, there were a couple of little tweaks left for the superintendent on that evaluation
Right.
policy.
I made the
but-
corrections.
But
Yeah,
then,
and
some corrections, yes.
I have
and
it.
then- Well, but then it should be given to the
Yes,
members of
yes,
the
it will
board.
be.
Yeah.
It will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else? Okay, so now we're on to action items. First item is recommended acceptance of a grant from the Jeffrey P. Austin Family Foundation that was in our packets. I'll entertain a motion to accept the grant.
Move we accept the grant with thanks from the Jeffrey P. Olson Foundation.
A second.
Seconded, made by Murphy, seconded by Ilda. Any discussion?
Decide.
Yes?
We currently don't have enrichment at the middle school because of an inability to get people to help us with it.
It's
to come
on
together.
hiatus,
Right.
right.
How is this going to be affected? How is this going to affect the grant? We can't accept money for a program we're not currently running.
So today we had a big meeting. We plan to start the cycle back again in January.
Okay.
I'm not in January, I'm sorry, in March. In March, we're getting a lot of people since the letter went out. It's just that we needed 40 providers and we didn't have 40 providers. And it was a safety matter, having 27 providers when we need 40. So we are getting more. I mean, today we had how many? About 4 new people that came, well-educated people from all over, from Chaplin, from.
So we will be starting it up in
in
March
March, right.
and be able to use the money.
Thank you.
Yes. Good point, though.
We do have to
Yeah.
rethink it because, there are some parents that think that it's not necessary to have it. So we want to do a little restructuring, but we will start it back in March.
Well, and it's difficult on parent schedules, though, like they're getting out early, they're not getting out early, like to keep being flexible like that, especially with the younger kids or somebody who needs to be supervised at home. So we need to find some continuity there.
Well, there's only 2 days a week, and that's standard. We
Right.
don't remove them. It's 2 days a week. So already know it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah.
Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. The next item, I'd entertain a motion to recommend on acceptance of a grant from the Savings Institute Financial Group Foundation.
So moved?
Second.
That was also in your packets. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Then the third one is recommended approval of the Windham High School trip to Washington, D.C. The details of that application are in your packet. I'll entertain a motion
So
to
moved.
approve it.
I second that.
Second, motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
What happens if nothing's open when they get there? I'm not kidding. I mean,
No,
this
I
could go on
understand.
for an extended period of time. What happens? I mean, I'm assuming we have to put down deposits with bus companies and hotels and stuff like that. I've already sent in my deposit for my AP student, and so I just want to know, like, is there a percentage of the money we get back? Do we not get any money back? I'm just concerned about that. Not necessarily for me so much, but for some family who's scraping this money together and then is going to go without.
So I don't have the answer to that. I want to check with the tomorrow. I think they're hoping that DC will be back into session by March 30th, March 27th, that they attend. I mean, we're hoping that the country back to normal
Absolutely.
in March 27th. But I will ask them that question, what
Yeah, is
precaution
there
are they
some
taking?
sort of a travel
Insurance
insurance
or
or something
contingency
like
or
that?
something.
Right, yes. Okay, so
We
if,
could have 'em
we'll
visit
look
the
into that.
Congress.
Anything else? So assuming that we'll look into that and have that answer for parents that may want to know the answer to that. All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention from Mike.
We have a budget transfer.
Okay, and then we have the budget transfer, so I'll entertain a motion on that.
There's only one item, so I move that we approve a transfer of $600 from administrative supplies to professional affiliations. And
Did we approve this last month?
no, we approved all but this one,
Oh, okay.
okay?
To what? Where is it going
So
to?
there were,
Just-
the one item that occurred that came up after we had the transfers that we did last month is a $600, basically professional affiliations is membership dues and whatnot to associations.
Okay, we're not going to discuss it. You're just going to put the motion on the floor and second it, then we can discuss it.
Second.
Motion is on the floor. Was it seconded? Okay, now you can explain it.
Okay. So this is just basically paying the bills for professional dues out of administrative supplies. So,
Any questions about that $600 budget transfer? Okay, all those in favor?
okay.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you. I don't see any members of the public here for public comment. So we will go into, next thing we will do is go into executive session.
I move
And
we
I'll
go
enter-
into executive session for exempt documents pertaining to personnel matters.
Second.
Second, motion's been made. All those in favor? Okay, we're going into executive session at 8:38.